What's up guys, RussLyman here, and this past weekend would have been the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, they had to postpone it till next year. So I thought it'd be great to kind of recap all the Portland Retro Gaming Expos that I've been to and why I enjoy this show so much. So let's check it out.
Russ, what you doing? Russ, what you doing? Russ, what you doing? Let's find out!
Now, the first time I ended up going to the show was back in 2015, 5 years ago, and that was all thanks to the Nintendo Doctor. Me and the Nintendo Doctor ended up meeting through YouTube, making videos, commenting on each other's videos, and our buddy George as well. He was in the S Squad, was the channel name back then. So we ended up becoming personal and having a text conversation that would go out throughout the year, and the Nintendo Doctor ended up inviting us out to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. He said you should come out to the West Coast, check out the expo here. I think you really enjoy it.
Winter's coming. Winter's coming. It's cold in Connecticut, George. Hold door.
I live in Connecticut on the East Coast, so it's quite a bit a ways to travel, but I ended up traveling all the way over there without ever meeting him in real life, taking a chance he wasn't gonna murder me. But things were okay, and I ended up meeting him, going to the show, and having a great time. Now, the convention center is huge, definitely a lot bigger than some of the conventions that I've been to, and I really enjoy the cool lighting that they have and the openness of everything. And this year was a special theme. Since it was 2015, everything was Back to the Future, because in Back to the Future 2, Marty McFly goes into the future of 2015 in October, and it was lined up perfectly with the dates and everything. I even grabbed a t-shirt, and it was themed with Back to the Future on it. Got Marty right there in his suit, and the font itself is Back to the Future font. Really awesome. And this was the first time I actually ended up cosplaying for a convention. I did a Marty McFly cosplay, had my vest on, and I actually wore a wig and had my Nikes with the red swoosh on it, and I ended up running into other people that were cosplaying as Marty. They had one from every generation. We took a picture, and it definitely was a fun time. And this was the year that I ran into Retrotainment. This is a homebrew game company making NES games. And they were making this NES game called Haunted Halloween 85. And I was definitely blown away with it. It looked awesome, played great, so I had to pick up a copy. And I ended up doing a full review of it. And they said I was one of the first YouTubers that put together a review for them. And since then, we remained friends, and they come out with more games since then. So it's definitely great to support that community of making new games for older generation consoles.
This game feels like home to us.
Awesome.
And this was something that we wanted to really bring to everyone else.
And while walking around the floor, I ended up running into John Gamester81, and it was great to chat with him a bit. I was telling him how I backed his game on Kickstarter, Sydney Hunter. So here's Sydney Hunter on the Super Nintendo, and we were talking about the soundtrack for the game, and it was pretty exciting. He was a little exhausted from speaking to everyone all day, but very humble guy, so it was great to meet him. Since then, you know, Sydney Hunter has come out on the Nintendo Switch and Xbox, I believe, so he has newer versions of the game, so it's great to see that it's still going. And then it was great to just hang out with George and walk around the expo, picking up a few items here and there.
Got a pretzel.
Picking up a pretzel, it's heavy.
Playing in the arcade, and they have a cool area set up with some vintage couches and shag carpet, and we kind of chilled out there and relaxed for a little bit. Then, unfortunately, the next year, I wasn't able to attend the expo. I was in my friend's wedding, so I couldn't cancel on that to go to a game convention, so I had to miss out. So the next time I was going to the expo was in 2017.
Guys, RussLyman here, and I'm at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo.
So this year, George came back and brought his girlfriend Cindy and his brother Bubba as well. So all three of us were hanging out together, walking around the expo floor. I was excited too because I got upgraded to a media badge.
Got the camera. We're in.
since I was going to film the event, I reached out to Chuck, who helps organize the event, and I was like, hey, I'm coming out from Connecticut. You think you could throw me a media badge? So thank you so much, guys, for hooking me up. So we were walking around the floor getting some footage, game hunting, and the Nintendo Doctor, of course, had his booth where he was selling repro games, import games, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So periodically we would check back in with him, see how he was doing, see if he needed any help. And the cosplay is certainly awesome at this event as well. There's this guy who rides on a unicycle and plays bagpipes, and he usually changes his outfit every year. This year he was on a like Mario riding a Yoshi, which was awesome. And Atari Age was set up set in fronter, showcasing a lot of new homebrew games for the Atari 2600, 7200, all the older generation systems. So I spent a lot of time checking those out and playing those games. And then I did pick up a few NES homebrew games as Simulation. It's a abduction alien game. So I did get it complete in box. And I guess it says AVS Launch Series, so they had the AVS system there. So I guess this is maybe one of the games that they were showcasing with it. Pretty interesting game. It looked neat, gave it a try, and yeah, it's fun. And I also ended up picking up this game called Tailgate that uses the power pad. I thought that was an interesting concept. There's no new games that utilize the power pad. And you take bean bags, you have to unfortunately make the bean bags, purchase them or whatever, and you're throwing them at the power pad, similar to that of playing cornhole. So like Tailgate, you're in a parking lot, hanging out, cooking some food, and I guess, you know, throwing your bean bags around. Pretty neat concept. And of course the guys from Retrotainment were back, and they were showcasing their game Haunted Halloween 85, and they had some new Famicom cartridges of the game that you get in a big elaborate display, so they're really going full force with it. So it was great to see those guys again. And Mark Erickson was there, the guy who did the cover art for Mega Man 2. That's the most known, but he's also done other cover arts for Nintendo and various systems. So I stepped into his panel and kind of got the concept of how they came up with the cover art back in the day. I did run into the Bad Graphic Gamers. I had met them when I was at Too Many Games in Pennsylvania, and they happened to be out here selling stuff. They had a booth, and they remembered me, so we chatted for a bit, and I picked up a game from them, so it was cool to see them.
Oh, Russ. Oh, Russ.
Oh, Russ, slow. Perception.
And then they had on display the PlayStation Nintendo system that someone found. And this is a one-of-a-kind prototype item. And it never came to be. PlayStation and Nintendo were going to put out a system together, but that fell through. And there's this one console that was put together. So it was on display. You can see it and actually play one of the games. Ben Heck ended up working on it and getting it to work, so you can put a Super Famicom game in there. So they had Street Fighter, so you can play that. And that actually, the system ended up selling pretty recently. Let's see, what did it say here? Prototype Nintendo PlayStation console that never came to market fetched $360,000 at auction. So pretty awesome. Day 2 ready to go. Other than that, I was walking around the Game Expo floor, checking out the artists, going to the arcade, and just chatting with people that I don't get to see all year since they're on the West Coast.
Are you my shot, Russ?
So 2018, I came back, and Bubba and George came back as well. I was like, didn't you guys leave before me, though?
Yeah,
or did you have a layover?
Oh.
And we had the Nintendo Doctor, so we had the Four Horsemen tackling Portland Retro Gaming Expo once again. So we were walking the floor. Now, George and Bubba were going for a complete N64 set, and they were getting pretty close. So they were trying to make some deals. They brought some stuff for trade as well. So they were trying to get down to the last couple games that they needed. So that was pretty awesome. Resting in the beanbag lounge. And then I myself brought a couple custom controllers that I made, and the Nintendo Doctor let me display them on his table where he was selling stuff, and I ended up selling a few of the controllers. I sold a custom Ninja Turtles controller that I did, and the guy that purchased it from me, he actually grabbed the controller from me the year before, so he was hoping I brought some more. And then my buddy Jeffrey,
So Jeff wanted to buy my controller. Of course I did. Now,
who puts out plenty of books on video games. We ran into each other again, and he's a huge Freddy Krueger fan, and I made a sweet Freddy NES controller for him. So we made a trade and ended up getting one of his books for that. And then on display there, I met this guy, Rewind by Design, he goes by online, and he makes custom arcade cabinets, full-size arcade cabinets, but they're arcades of games that weren't in the arcade. So he had on display there a Legend of Zelda arcade machine that looked awesome, Mega Man, and DuckTales as well. And they definitely blew me away. He spent so much time working on these and seeing them in person. They were fantastic. So it was great to chat with him and check out his custom arcade cabinets. And then this is the first time I met my buddy Sergio, who does video game music. Great adaptations of video game songs. He's been doing a lot on YouTube of video game songs kind of in the punk rock fashion. But I did end up buying his CD where he did a lot of stuff with a ukulele, so a little bit more soothing music. Definitely a cool guy. We were chatting for a little bit, and it was great to pick up some stuff from him and support, a local artist. John Riggs was there, so I had to say hi to him. I never got to meet him before, so he was at the expo, and then I ran into my buddy Genovi, who does YouTube videos as well, so it was cool to meet him. Then Gary from Rock Solid Productions saw me, and he was singing my theme song, and Gabbo was there. This is the first time I met Gabbo, and he was kind of floating around in the background, and then of course there was Riff or Aaron from Pixel Game Squad. And
you know why I like Russ? Because he smiles a lot.
Hey guys, RussLyman here.
I, watched him on the NES Pursuit many years ago, and this is the first time we actually got to meet and hang out for a little bit.
When I watch his show, I'm like, first of all, more people need to be watching Russ's show. Secondly, I'm like, this is beautiful.
Now, I brought a custom NES system that I put together. I made a video for it, and I was bringing it out to sell to the expo, and Aaron was interested in purchasing it, and he actually ended up getting it and showing it off in the NES Pursuit video that they did for that show. And I got a lot of comments and people messaging me like, oh my god, we saw you on the NES Pursuit, and can we get some custom work from you? So it was a big help, being there, being able to meet him and give Aaron a piece of custom item that I made.
Glad I get to run into you. The first year I was going to come out to here, you guys couldn't make it.
I know. Well, it's just funny because I feel like we already knew each other.
And this year, Mark Erickson was back once again, and the t-shirt they did was his design. It looks like the Mega Man 2 cover, but it says Portland Retro Gaming Expo 2018, so I had to pick up a shirt with that. And we actually ended up chatting with him and his wife during one of the days. We were packing up, and we ran into Mark Erickson's wife in the parking lot, and she was looking for some jumper cables, which we didn't have. And then Mark came over and he was like, oh, can they help us out? And she was like, oh no, they can't, they're worthless, kind of nonchalantly saying that. And she was like, no, I didn't mean it that way. We kind of joked about it. So the next day when we were at the expo, we were walking around the floor, and I ended up going over to her booth.
Oh my god, are you the guy? Oh my god, all day long I wanted to apologize.
Hey, we met you in the parking lot yesterday, and she was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be so rude to you. And, we ended up having a great conversation, and I ended up picking up 2 prints from him. I got the Mega Man 2 print that he made, and also Space Harrier. He did the cover of Space Harrier, so I picked that up as well. So it was great to chat with them for a little bit. And every year they have the Tetris World Championships held there, and my buddy Paul Tessie was in the running of playing that. He set a lot of world records. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for a few video games, so it was great to meet him and chat with him for a bit.
What? Yeah, so you played last night. You did lose though, so I was a little upset.
Bad pieces. Bad pieces.
It happened. We already played, so.
Unfortunately, he didn't take home the trophy, but we were watching the competition, and the kid that won, I believe, was 15 at the time, so he wasn't even born when Tetris was made. But it's definitely great to see how big the crowd is and how much they get into the Tetris game. the players are so laser focused with the pieces falling. I could never do it, but it was a sight to see nonetheless. And this year was the first year that I brought the cosplay of my NES Jason. I'm in full purple with blue mask and blue machete. So I brought that out and was walking around the convention, and people loved it. And then my buddy Kevin from Happy Bear Gaming, he did a NES Batman, so he was in purple as well. So we got a couple photos together, so that was a great time.
Good?
Yeah.
Like every game room ever? Underwear and sweaty socks?
Smell like Robbie.
And old Pamela Anderson posters?
And switching it up to last year, I actually ended up flying from Connecticut to New Mexico. George is from New Mexico, and he said, why don't you come out? You can hang out in my town for a few days. And then we actually drove from New Mexico to Portland. George and his brother Bubba wanted to sell some items. They had a whole bunch of stuff collected up, and they were going to split a booth with the Nintendo doctor and sell some stuff. So we needed to drive up to bring the product up there. So it was a great road trip. We ended up stopping at a Bookums. Yeah, I think it was called Bookums on the way there. So a little bit of game hunting. We hit up In-N-Out, which I never had before. So we had to get animal-style burgers and fries. Good stuff. And then we swung by Vegas, because I'd never been to Vegas before. We had a short time, so we spent about 2 hours in Vegas. We're almost at Vegas! Yeah! Woo! But then we finally got to Portland, and it was a day before the convention. So we always try to go around to the local game shops and check them out. A lot of times, they don't have a lot of stock because they're bringing it to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, but it's still great to see the stores, outside our area. But when we finally got to the expo, it was definitely a good time. I was kind of hanging out a little bit by myself because George and his brother were manning the booth with the Nintendo doctor selling their items. So I was kind of roaming around on my own, getting some footage for videos, and I ran into so many people from YouTube this past year. First off, Jesus was there. Jesus Christ, we're having a good time here.
Yes, we are.
Then, of course, my buddies from Retrotainment, and they now have since came out with Haunted Halloween 86, and it's available on the Nintendo Switch, Xbox One. So their booth was all set up, and they have a bunch of new NES games coming to the system, so I'm super excited for that. So it was always great to chat with those guys. My buddy Joe Granato is there.
Why they're doing it.
Hey, Joe.
Hey.
He's the guy behind NES Maker, where you can make your own NES games. It's a complete system you can buy, and makes it kind of drag and drop. Really easy, so he was cool to chat with. Again, the guy with the bagpipes was back this time. He was dressed as Sonic the Hedgehog, because why not? I ran into my buddy Chris. He was there, so we were chatting it up and hanging out. He actually ended up bringing his ferret to the show. He had a booth where he was selling stuff, so he was hanging out there, so I swung by to say hi to the ferret as well. I come to see Olive. I ran into Gaming Off the Grid. They were there, so it was the first time I got to meet them, and Telesplash Gaming was there as well, so we chatted for a little bit. And of course, Gary was back. He was hanging out a lot with Ryan from Castlemania Games. He had a nice booth set up, selling a bunch of stuff, so I didn't want to take up too much of their time. And then I ran into Sean from the Nerd Lair, who I've watched plenty of his videos, and we've done collaborations in the past. And then big shout out to Chuck, because he hooked me up. I got like a VIP pass, so I was able to go to areas where normally I wouldn't be able to go. So I got to go high up in the conference center and get an awesome shot of the full convention floor. You could just see how massive it is and how many people fill up that convention over the few days. Other than that, I spent a lot of time walking around in the arcade area. They had the free play area. We could play pinball machines and plenty of other console games and arcade games, and they had the lounge area. Can't forget the lounge area. It's set up like a retro lounge area. Shag carpet, old CRT TVs, and big couches. So if you're tired of walking around, you can sit down and relax there for a little bit. Periodically, I would swing back and check in with the Nintendo doctor, because he had his booth there selling repo games that he does, import games, and George and Bubba were selling all of their stuff, and they were making out pretty well. A lot of people had great positive feedback on the items that they brought. They had like a N64 Pikachu, a Panasonic 3DO system that they were trying to sell, and a bunch of games and stuff. So they did pretty good. And their plan, was to come back again this year, as well as me. I was going to fly out to New Mexico once again and do the road trip, because that definitely was a fun time. But unfortunately, it couldn't happen, and the show has now been postponed to 2021. I believe, again, it's going to be in summertime, in August. Usually it's in October. So this was going to be kind of a switch up, it being in August, summertime, whether more people were going to be able to come out, maybe because of school was out, and I guess it would be a lot hotter there too as well, because every time we go, it's raining, of course, always raining in Portland. We're going to go game hunt, we just got here. It's raining in Portland, you don't disappoint. But it was going to be interesting to see, so I'm kind of bummed, this weekend would have been spent with a lot of my West Coast friends that I don't normally get to see. It's such a great event and a different atmosphere. Me going to all the conventions here on the East Coast is definitely different from the West Coast. I did pick up this cool shirt that kind of mimics Super Mario 2. It wasn't last year's shirt. This says the 11th annual, so I'm not sure when this one actually came out, but it looks like Sasquatch is on there, and they got a lumberjack guy, so I thought that was pretty sweet. But yeah, it's always a great time to come out there, and definitely worth the trip. As Gannon said, I'm from Connecticut, so I fly across the entire coast to go to this convention, but it's definitely a blast. So if you guys haven't been to it and are thinking of going again next year in August, it's going to be Portland Retro Gaming Expo. So give it a thought, and hopefully cons will be back next year. Well guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it. Subscribe if you're not already. And as always, I'm RussLyman, and keep your world fun bit by bit. I'll see you next video.
And I want to give a super shout out to all my Patreon supporters: Dan Buchanan, Joey Ellis, George Sandoval, Joseph Riviera, Nintendo, Joe Sheevy, David Apuzzo, Maynard, Brian Culpepper, TechWizX, Matthew Hannigan, Alex Kaz, Ayan Oshi, Gannon, and all my Patreon supporters. Link below if you want to join, and I'll see you later.